In this segment, I'm speaking with Ying Wu. Ying is the CEO of Startup Care with nearly 20 years of experience in technology and healthcare. As a serial entrepreneur, Ying founded Dr. Heart, the first 24-hour wearable heart attack risk predictor in China, and co-founded Socrates AI, a leading cross-border medical AI solution with successful exit. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Ying held various management positions in product, sales, and marketing at Samsung Electronics, Intel, and Eli Lilly, a leading global pharma company. Startup Care is a premium medical insurance solution for startups and SMEs in Greater China. Startup Care is backed by CareVoice, one of the leading insurance platforms, and aims to provide one-stop shop solution for both HRs and policyholders. CareVoice and Startup Care are startups founded by foreign founders based in Greater China.
Actually, I've been in startup for almost 10 years. So before that, I always worked for the MNCs. I started to work for Samsung and Intel, and I went to the US for MBA. And when I go back, I worked for a pharmaceutical company, Eli Lilly, for 2 years. And that was the time I began my entrepreneurship. And actually, my first entrepreneurship experience was a co-founding experience with another foreign founder. Is American, and he founded the company in Shanghai, stayed in Shanghai for 13 years. But finally moved the company back to the US and sold the company. So obviously was a successful exit. So for this one, Startup Care, actually was my second one with the foreign founders. But actually it was kind of expedited from the coronavirus because I was working in Guangzhou before. And then I tried to actually change my job because I want to be back in healthcare. I was in the AI startup. I invested before. So when I got back to Shanghai after the Chinese New Year, then I started to realize that maybe it's a good time to actually speed up the change of job. And also, so my focus will be still back on the healthcare, technology, and the internet. So I think Startup Care actually fits all three of them. And I was approached by their HR manager through LinkedIn. So everything digital. And then I took us through a very thorough interview with them. And I think the one particular reason that they hired me is because I actually worked with foreign founders before. And I worked for several projects. You know, some people, they actually started a startup, work for several years, and then go back to the big industries. For me, I've been here for almost 10 years, both working as a entrepreneur and an investor. So I think it's also good for Startup Care and CareVoice to be able to do the fundraising after. So I think there are multiple factors, but basically I think it's my previous experience and also my focus on the industry, especially health and technology, that leads me to Startup Care. Well, actually both. So I think for the first part is that I'm particularly interested in health and technology. I'm not so familiar with the insurance industry, so that's why I actually had some considerations and concerns, and then I figured out that this is a very booming industry. Actually, last year, where all these other insurance segment is declining in China, the health insurance is up on the 109%. Even before the coronavirus. After the coronavirus, we have seen actually even bigger awareness from the customers. But for the team, yes, I think it's, I really like the international team because you don't see that much kind of a startup, even in Shanghai, right? Foreign founders, but a lot of local presence, and started with some foreign clients, but start to now to actually localize. But also as a startup to start in Shanghai and expanded to Hong Kong, and now we expanded to Southeast Asia as well. So I think that actually gives me a even more larger room of imaginations that we're not only doing something for China, but we're doing something in China, but for the globe. This is certainly important. And another even more important factor is China is starting to be considered as a global gateway. So I think that before all these startups in China, they are considered only for China market. But now with a team like that, we're starting to actually been looking forward outside of China. So I think that's one of the key factors, and that's also one of the benefits for having a foreign founder in China with expansion to the other surrounding areas. So I think that's a big change. I guess it's about the market that you serve, and also about the performance that you already have. So I think actually I've known the founder for 5 years. So that's also part of the reason why I joined the company. And but for their attraction, they have been working very successfully with insurers, like the international insurers that are world famed. So I think the starting to make some real business, and also with a high speed growth over the last 2-3 years, especially. So I think that's one of the attraction for these investors, because they can see that you start to make real tractions. Because over for technology sector, and over the last 2 or 3 years, there's a bubble. There was a bubble on investing into concepts. So you have good PPTs and people want to invest into you, but not many of these like real performers. So I think Startup Care or Care Voice, they are actually a real performer, having 15 partners already as an insurer, and being able to make a real business out of it, and also making a scalable business. So that makes investor believe that not only we can make business in China, we can make business somewhere else, like in Hong Kong, we already did, and we start to do in Southeast Asia. So because the nature of that business is scalable. So I think that's a key reason why our investor invest in us. Of course, we have local investors, and we have international investors at the same time. Actually, Startup Care coming from a set of concepts of what we call care products. So the care products are scenario-based insurance products. So Startup Care is the first of care product. It focuses on the startup care segment, and especially on the expat side, because that's the most low-hanging fruit at that moment. But over time, we've seen a similar needs from local expats, and also from local executives, and also starting from local technology companies. So we see those needs from actually not only the people by nationality, but people by probably the income levels and their habits, and also their way of being influenced by the Western style. For the Western style, I mean that people might been studying in the US or in Europe before and get back to China, but they already been very accustomed to the insurance product or concept. So those are the guys that we are targeted. Actually, we have expanded from the specific customer segment to a specific way of doing business. So I think for us, we are more of an insurtech that based on having most of these sales and marketing flows online. So that traditionally insurance was just bought offline with agents and people who sell to you face to face. But now, especially with the coronavirus, it's not possible. So then you have to actually have a tool to serve those customers. So that's why we have those kind of online tool to be able to close the sales and also serve them on top of what we already have to close the deal. So I think that's very important by not only having the product information, but also have the business model innovation enabled by the technology. As a matter of fact, we actually have a technical feature that help our customers, which is HRs, to control the medical expense so that they will be able to have a lower pricing on the next year. So I think that's also part of our innovation as well. First of all, unfortunately, I don't think there's one website that explains all these details, but I will use what I had with biotech industry before. But it's actually the other way around. It's for the Chinese entrepreneurs try to learn about the U.S. regulations, because when in the biotech, then people are actually do the R&D for the new drugs. They are trying to learn from how they are getting approved from the FDA, because the Chinese FDA is actually copy a lot from the FDA part in terms of the guidelines. They are actually doing a better job in speeding up the approval process. So the way the Chinese entrepreneurs do is they actually consult the experts from FDA. So there are Chinese experts or Chinese American experts that work for FDA before, especially in the approval sector or the clinical trial sector. They have a lot of these experience, and they can come back to China and be serving in some of the Chinese companies and giving them advices, professional advices. So I will suggest the same for foreigners coming into China. Get someone who is really into the industry and had hands-on experience with the regulations, because sometimes it's easy to it's easy to explain in high level and do the storytelling, but without doing something in real, then it's very hard for anyone to really tell the caveats of working with government and government agencies. So I think that's still very critical, and still offline, I think. In terms of general technology, China is actually already in line with most of the countries, especially the US. But I've found a interesting pattern between China and US is that the Chinese Chinese startups are more inclined to make something big. Like they always want to do a platform, and they always want to target to a 10 billion US dollars market. And they are, so the result is they're actually, a lot of times they're doing the similar thing. And then in a lot of these segments, and especially on the internet economy, then there's only one left over. So people competing for the crown, and then all the others are just dying out. So we've seen a lot of these trend in the taxi hailing, and also in the riding, the ride sharing. There's barely like only one or two left over in China. On the other side, I think because I've been working in Silicon Valley before, I think the founders in Silicon Valley, they focus more on a specific applications, and they are actually focused on one actual need from a company, from a consumer or group of consumers. For example, I've seen this company that like PayPal or any other payment company or platforms. They started with a very specific use case of getting the online payment, and they're still very what we describe can be single use, but in China it will be embedded into Tencent or Alibaba, that type of platform. But I think China actually moving forward is learning from that pattern from the Silicon Valley as well, so that I think if a foreign founder has a specific ideas to serve specific segment in China, that will be better off moving forward, because otherwise it's going to be hard for them to compete with the giants, because we've seen these startups trying to do forms. The good ones are backed by BAT, these companies, Alibaba, Tencent, and then the smaller ones are dying out. So I think there is some room in between, that having specific usage, serving specific segment. Like Startup Care, when we start to actually serve the expats, we know that this is good for us, and this is not easy for the other guys. And we only by doing this, we're able to expand to lower segment. But if we don't do that, then we're competing with all the giants that's 100 times larger than us, then we're gonna die. So I think that's just the reality. I think it's based on our situation, our own situation, because we are an international team. We're naturally connected to the foreigner community in Shanghai. I think that becomes our lowest hanging fruit. And also for our industry, the insurance, the medical insurance is easier to be accepted by these foreigners, because they already have those services in their home country. So I think for us, it's a no-brainer. And it's also a no-brainer when we actually start to localize that, because we see that the actual needs are coming over from the local needs. We will not be limited by us just being an international team, can only serve the international community. It's definitely for us to serve the local community. I think for any foreign companies or foreign startups in at least in the tier 1 cities, they will be able to think about the same way, because when you are very young and you are very small, you're gonna tap those market that's closer to you, and or you have a competitive edge. Otherwise, you're gonna be like eaten very quickly by the local competition. But if you find one, then actually it build up your barriers that the others cannot easily get in. And then this will be stage 1. Stage 2 is more about, do you want to localize? Do you want to expand? And then you're getting into someone else's territory. And then you're gonna figure out how to compete. That's another level of competition, and that's another level of strategy. Well, I think it's a kind of a double-edged sword. So on one side, that you want to keep your original idea, and you keep being unique. And for that case, if you have a specific need to serve, then that's a good thing. And on the other side, then if you on the other side, it might means that you refuse to adapt to the local need. If that's the case, then it might actually cause you a challenge. So the challenge can come to a point that you limit your own market value, or your total addressable market, or you can be easily besieged by the local competition, and before you finally found out yourself isolated. So I think as a entrepreneur or as a founder, that you're gonna be very agile, and you're gonna be very sensitive to the changing environment. As a matter of fact, I think in the course of my own entrepreneurship and also Care Voice, they have pivoted several times and also changed the course. I think those change the course, some are proactively, some are more reactively. So I think the most important is that basically listen to the needs from the market and decide. And there's no clear-cut answers for those. So I think the first opportunities or leads coming from a personal network, and then just because we're in this industry, and we used to work for MNCs, and we start to know these people in our partners. So that was be the beginning part. But after that, I think it's more about finding the opportunity that attracts those partners. So for in our case, that we work with very big insurers. and like 100 times larger than us. And why they have to work with us? Wouldn't be able to provide their own insurance product? Of course they will. But I think we have a very unique position for ourselves is that we will be able to help with them on their product information or innovation and business model innovation. So for these very big partners, some of them are multinational, some of them are the industry leaders in China. Most of them have very high group policies and SOPs that require a very long cycle for them to develop a new product. So for us, we can actually, as a startup, we can develop those products very quickly and on a very different way. So we position ourselves as a lab for them so that they can actually try on their new ideas and on the new segment. A segment that is that might be 1% of their current market, that's already very big for us. So I think both are actually better off by having this kind of alliance. And when we actually add on more partners, we also become bigger. And then our partner will see a verified business model when we have more partners and then they have more confidence to work with us. So I think that's the part of 1 to 10. And the previous part will be 0 to 1. So I think anyone who wants to work with larger partners will need to find a unique selling point or unique value proposition to start with, and then find a scalability problem that help you with for a larger extent or a larger scale. First of all, you need to have a good pitch to the right people. So for us, we're going to the top management first, and then they will find the right people for you. So which is a product owner in this partner, and then we will go for this partner to actually understand their needs. So basically, all of our products are customized. So then we actually provide our standard service to them, and then ask for their advice or feedback on what could be a good customization for them. And they will give us their feedbacks, and they will actually go through those meetings. So consider this is a typical to-be selling process. And then we have to go through like 3 or 4 meetings to be able to get all the specs and details finalized. But finally, we're able to actually provide a package of service to them that both giving them a technology capability to serve their customers, and also a way for them to provide this information that is a product innovation. As a matter of fact, I think startup care coming from an idea to when we work with these big partners. So when the mother company, CareVoice, is trying to making a product innovation with this big partner, then they come up the idea is that why don't you just actually make a prototype of yourself? And because we started as a CRM platform for the insurers, and then we're tapping into a product innovation sector, which is a new sector for us. So and then we thought that it was a good idea, because if we actually do it under the partner, then we have to go through a lot of this bureaucratic process, which will largely slow down the pace. So I think that's why we go back and actually package into our own offering, and then this offering becoming a good way to partner with those partners, because for insurance, there is an underlying capability that was licensed by the government. So for us, we will not be able to do the underwriting for the insurance product, but we can do everything else, like the designs and the technologies. So it's perfect for us to work with them to provide this customized product to our segmented customer. So I think after that, these 3-4 meetings, then we have to go through a process to be able to implement what need to be changed, and mainly on our own platform, and together with the input from our partners. And finally, when we finish that part, the technology part, we'll go back and negotiate the product offerings, which means business terms, like the pricing, the product details, the plan details, and also the commission rates for the product. So I think it's a typical process. It's not very short, but I think it's actually when we actually do it the second time, it's much more efficient. So I would say for the first time, it's also part of the learning process, that what are the most the best direction to go. One of the things is that you never assume that your needs is their needs. So I think different company will have different needs, especially for startup versus a multinational or international company, and their needs will be very different. So usually you have to consider a detailed at our side could be a really big issue at the partner side. For example, if we design a product to change a small detail of the plans to like maybe adding one members in the family, and they have to go through the regulation, they have to go through the compliance, they have to go through these things. So if we're not careful enough, then our partners will actually facing a big challenge. So for a startup, it's actually very critical to understand their environment and their behavioral pattern and their the process they're going through. I think this is point one, and point two will be how to talk to the different people. So there are in a very large organization, typically there are decision makers who join the first meeting and the last meeting. So and getting brief in between from the internal team, and there will be people who are on the front line to work with you to every details and challenge it on every details. And then there will be people who are coming in from time to time and giving their consultant ideas and trying to be a judge. So you're gonna understand all the difference from those stakeholders, and you're gonna understand what extent or the fine line that you hold. So not being able to distracted by the details from the frontier, but also understand what's the key point for the decision making. So I think understand the key point for decision making will take some time to learn. And also, but when you learn it, you can apply to someone else because in the industry, the decision making process is similar, excluding those personality differences. So I think those are the lessons that we have learned that we can speed up later on. The IP protection is actually become much better over the last 5 years, 5 to 10 years in China, because there are regulations protecting the IPs, and there are regulations on how you can make a lawsuit if you get an infringement. That being said, I think you still need to protect yourself. And the best way is not to basically telling 100% of all the details. And you can also tell the difference between a person who really want to work with you or a person who want to get your details. So a person who really want to work with you, usually they will actually talk more about how to partner and how to work and what is the scope and what is the responsibility. And on the other side, a person who really want to get details from you will ask all these detailed questions and how you do it, and ask you to send articles or send papers to them that they will for sure know that it's sensitive. So, and they will use the advantage of being a large guy to press you and to take advantage of your fear of losing a big business. So I think as a foreign startup, I think as any startup, is facing the same level of threat. And I also think that this is not China only, this is happening everywhere. But basically understand and trying to tell the difference between one people to another, and when they are actually having that kind of a pattern, and then being sensitive in mind. Yep, it's a very common practice in at least the technology-based industries, and we ask every of our partners sign NDA with us, and sometimes they will ask us to sign NDA with them as well. So I think it's people will not feel awkward about that right now. So it's very common practice. I guess I'll give an example first. So if you ask a question in America, then nobody answers, that might mean that nobody knows about it. If you ask the same question in China, nobody answers, don't assume so. So a lot of times people are kind of just shy to ask, to answer. And actually that leads to a difference in personality. So very well demonstrated when I was at B school almost 10 years ago. We have people from more than like 40 countries, with the US student being the majority. So you can see a very big difference in class when the professor asks questions, and some students are very outspoken, and usually the Asian students are very silent. They are very afraid of getting embarrassed by giving even the slightly wrong answer. But some other students are like really outspoken. They don't really care about whether being right. They care of getting all these opportunities and being able to having this exposure or giving a good impression. So I think the same concept applies when a foreign startup, especially for Europeans and American, coming into China, understanding that there is some reservations in the personality of Chinese people, and the best way is maybe to have a little drink with them, and then or have a dinner with them. And the good thing is that when they opens up to you, they are very open, and then but they will still tell you these caveats in person. So if you ask them the same question in front of two other people, they will not speak about it. If you ask them in person, then they will probably be very honest with you. So I think that's one difference. The other difference is the way of doing things. I think the Chinese people are, in general, tends to plan things more systematically. So they want to have everything in order and everything in plan, and actually then start to act. The startup community will be somewhat different, having a faster pace. But usually that will be different from what we see as the Western thinking of making quick wins and being agile, being very lean. Of course, the Chinese companies or the local people are learning about that pattern. We have seen, especially in startups, a lot of lean and agility and sprint used very often in the R&D sector. But still, I think in the majority of those are still having the same mindset that is changing slowly. So I think if you tell a Chinese people about a job to do, it's good to actually tell them about the background and how it affects systematically in the big picture, so that they are more driven in terms of getting this done. Like you said, I have foreigners in Shanghai with me. I have local Chinese. I have a team in Hong Kong. So even with they are all Chinese, they think differently. So I think the key principle for me is to respect the difference. So I understand that they think differently and they do things differently. So one of the example is when we're actually doing the marketing or the branding stuff in mainland and Hong Kong. Before I came, they used to actually try to align the effort on finding a good wording or a good messaging to both market. And then when I came on board, I started to realize that this is not going to work because the two markets are so different. So there's no reason to do it as a whole. So then I separate these scope and the responsibility and ask the marketing owners of each market to totally act on their own. So I told them there's only one thing that needs to be consistent is the brand name. So you're gonna have a brand name because we might do the geographic expansion, but other than that, you can be very accustomed and localized in your market. So I think that actually gives them motivation. Otherwise, they have to do a lot of compromises, and that resulting in a way that is not good to each of those parties. So I think back to this is how we do things. So back to the communication, I do have a lot of one-on-ones with them. So I think there's individually there is a very unique way of doing things, and I have weekly meetings with different markets. We have bi-weekly updates across the market. Especially we have a interested topic to share. So we are not only doing like you share what you are doing, your priorities. I think the people at the other location probably will not be that interested in learning about the details of the priorities, but there might be topics that can be shared across these things like branding, how you do branding, like a case study of what we try to do. And also sometimes we share the comparison of a product in the market, how this is going to work in the mainland market. Even if this doesn't apply to Hong Kong, and then the people in Hong Kong are being easy to learn because they are not forced to do that, but they can make the reference out of it. So I think in that case we keep the difference, but we also learn from each other. I think that's the momentum and that's the culture that I want to develop in an international organization. Most of the employee can speak English quite well, so there is no actual need for all of people to speak Mandarin. But most of these executives understand basic level of Mandarin as well. So if there's a need, they can talk to the local customers as well. So I think that's something that's very important for a company like us. But I do see there's other companies who are mainly like all foreigners or foreigners plus locals with English only. I think that can happen in somewhere in Shanghai, certain area, but not outside those areas. I think it's more important to have a Mandarin mind than to have a Mandarin speaking. So even if you don't speak Mandarin, then if you can think the way that they think, then it's much better off. So you can speak and communicate in English, but you can be aligned on a more Chinese way of doing things. So I think that will be even more critical, especially for tier 1 cities, because English is not a barrier for a lot of people. Well, I think it's fortunate that the healthcare industry could be a survivor of the COVID-19 and could even actually get better after the COVID-19 because people are more aware of their own health. In the short term, we've seen a business of masks and also the ventilating machines that's getting a boom from the healthcare sector. As a matter of fact, I've seen actually Q1 performance of major pharmaceutical companies or medical device companies getting up even more than the previous years, just because people need to get treated, and people are more needed from those treated as well, treatment as well. So I think over the long term, then in terms of healthcare, then we will still see a continuous trend of investment. I think over the last 2-3 years, in certain healthcare sectors, especially for biotech, they're getting a lot of investment. Actually, biotech is one of the hottest investment area across the world, but more so in China because Hong Kong stock exchange, opened up a new chapter to allow pre-revenue biotech company to get listed, starting from 2018. So over the 2 years, we've seen actually 16 listed company. Actually, one of the company that I intend to invest, where I was invested, just got listed today. So they've seen a very practical exit strategy by having these IPOs for these companies to compete on the local market. So I think we'll continue to see inflow of investment from top local and international investors for biotech. And I think the same trend goes with insurance, especially healthcare insurance, health insurance as well. Just for the reason that people are more aware of their health conditions, and also the companies are more aware of the benefit of protecting the health of their employees. So we are actually seeing a booming of investment into insurtech and also health tech, especially from strategic partnerships or strategic investors from the insurers, because this might be one of the things that they want to do, but they are not able to do yet. So they don't want to miss the opportunity. So I think over the next at least 2 to 3 years, these two areas, at least the ones that I'm familiar, will continue to be a hot area of investment. As a system, I think we're still talking about the operational efficiency problem. And as we all know that the Chinese social insurance is operating on a deficit for a quite long period of time. And the reason being is that it is quite hard to control the medical expense. The same issue happens in the US, but it was more in the private sector. In China, it's more on the public sector. So that's why we talked about this volume-based pricing and the public bidding and all of those, because the government want to actually control the behavior by taking in policies. But policies are only affecting one side. The other side is how to manage the medical behavior. Like once you go into the hospitals, how to make sure that these doctors are prescribing the right drug to you and not prescribing more drug to you than you need. So I think that will be something that will be co-controlled by government and also by commercial insurers as well. Because if you're not going reimburse them on abuse on medical expenses, and they will be able to change their behavior. But now it's still in a very early stage that there is literally very little influence on the doctor behavior, because most of these public hospitals in China are operating on its own. So they're getting government support, but on a very, very small percentage. So they have a lot of this autonomy. That was a price that has been paid to facilitate the growth of these hospitals. So I think we can start with private hospitals and covered by the commercial insurance, that being able to control the medical behavior and control the wastes and control the abuse of this medical expense, and be able to change the behavior, and also being able to change the behavior from the patient, so that they don't actually go to the hospital for non-necessary reasons. So I think that's something that we as a InsurTech is trying to do to change the behavior. So, but it's a long-term battle to win. So if you are a foreign founder who want to pitch investors, then you better go into these accelerators. Like the accelerator we are in, called XNode, is a very good one. It's one of the first in Shanghai. They're connected with hundreds of founders, so that you get the resource that you needed. You get the investors referred. And also we are part of accelerator called China Accelerator, which is one of the bigger ones in China as well. So I think you want to be connected with a key person at those accelerators. And there are some specific accelerators like China Accelerator who are more focused on foreigners doing startups in China. So if you find those kind of gateways, that will be more helpful. So if you want to do the networking, then I think it'll be good to actually have a two type of activities. One type is to attend the social gatherings. The health insurance drinks are one group that focus on the insurance people and the InsurTech people. They host regular events, and online and offline, to gather people and like-minded people to be able to find resource for them, and also schedule private meetings afterwards. The Healthcare Catalyst is a group in Shanghai that with more than 400 members, that most of them are founders and then co-founders in the healthcare related startups, and also the MNCs, pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies, and also some of these consultancies focus on healthcare. So I think that if you want to find resource in the healthcare sector, then I think you will be able to find resource in those two groups. But try to find those groups with a mixed background. So if a foreigner want to actually get connected, then it's better. Well, my suggestion was not to get only mixed with the other foreigners in China, because then you're not gonna tap into the local market. Try to get the ones that has both locals and foreigners. In terms of investment, there's an annual event called CHIC, CHIC, which stands for China Health Investment Conference, that was organized by a foreign organizer, where most of these companies go on roadshows, and then big companies trying to demonstrate what they have done, focus on pharmaceuticals, medical devices, having all the major investors coming in. That was usually hosted in March, not this year, but the last years. And in terms of industry-wide fairs, I will see that for some of these drug makers, pharmaceutical companies, there is a big event called CSCO, CSCO, which focus on the cancer drug development, more academic, but a lot of these companies are going there. So if you want to tap into the healthcare environment, especially on the oncology part, then those are the leading event that you want to do. And there, for medical device, there's one event called CMEF. I can barely remember the full name of it, but it was focused on medical device. So usually held twice a year, and a lot of times once in Shenzhen. So those are the ones that having all the booths from both MNCs and the local companies.
So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the interview and all the insights. In case you have any specific questions related to this interview, or even your specific case in terms of a startup, fundraising, building your product, etc., please do feel free to reach out to us. We would be more than happy to engage with you or connect you with the relevant people, experts, our speakers, or anybody else who can help you solve the problem.